Um, Hi, everyone. I'm Claire Shield. I am the GIS specialist for the Nebraska Forest Service. And as Cassidy said, I'm going to be presenting about the Nebraska Wildfire Risk Explorer tool, which is a web application that we just launched earlier this summer. And we expect that this could help with planning for prescribed fire and conservation and fuels reduction type of activities. So this is a web application, so you need a internet connection and a web browser. We recommend using Google Chrome, Microsoft Edge, or Apple Safari. That's what it's been tested on. The URL is nebraskawildfirerisk.com, and when you type that in, you will come to the home page here. And the main data and information in the tool is in this Launch the Risk Explorer button, but I'll first go through some of the features of the homepage here. So on the homepage, we have a quick look of current fire weather forecasts from the National Weather Service for the next 3 days. And this is also available in the Risk Explorer itself, but we just have the quick view on the homepage for easy access. We also have a quick view of where people can type in an address or a location and view their wildfire risk for that location, which I'll describe more about what the risk is in a second, but this is just for easy access as well on the homepage. And then we have a few links to resources for property owners for like wildfire preparedness and things like that. On the homepage, we also have a support link here in the top right of the screen, and that has user manuals and our email address, trees@unl.edu, is there. So if you have any questions or suggestions, you can send us an email there. So back to the homepage. Now I will actually launch the Risk Explorer, which is where all the good stuff is. So when you enter in for the first time, there are two options. There is a basic Explorer and an advanced view. I'm guessing that pretty much everyone here is going to want to use the advanced viewer. It has everything that's in the basic viewer, plus more data and more detailed information. So in order to get to the advanced viewer, you do need to make an account. It's free. And you'll just need an email address and create a password. And then we just ask for some contact information. Then once your account is approved, you'll get an email that says that it's been approved, and then you can sign in using that email and password that you created your account with. So now you'll actually be in the Explorer, and there are 3 tabs in the Explorer. I will start with the Map Themes tab, and this is where all the information is able to be viewed for the state. And so you can go through and you can turn layers completely off or make them fully opaque. And you can also reduce the transparency or increase the transparency so that you can see the base map underneath. So now I guess I'll go over some of the layers, the data that I think would be most useful for prescribed fire or conservation planning, things like that. So this risk 4-5 layer is showing wildfire risk on a 4 adjective category rating system. So the green is low risk, the yellow is moderate, orange is high, and red is very high. And this is, I want to make sure that people understand, because I had questions on this before. It's the wildfire risk that's based on landscape characteristics. So this risk layer itself is not taking into account current fire weather. It's just telling you, based on the landscape characteristics like the fuel types and the slope and things like that, what the wildfire risk is. If you want a more detailed view of the risk, you can look at this risk 50 layer, which is the same data as the risk 4-5 layer, but it's just broken down into 50 numerical categories rather than the 4 adjective categories. Also included in here that might be of interest is the fire severity layer. So this is telling you that if there were to be a fire, how intense would that fire be? So we see this as potentially being useful in identifying areas that might need fuels reduction or prescribed burn planned, because maybe if you're wanting to try to prevent these really intense fires that just completely scorch the soil and kill everything, then you might want to focus on those areas where that are showing the high chance of a high fire severity. We also have information about crown fire potential. So that's the potential for, if there's a fire, for it to get into the canopy of the trees. There's also information about landscape characteristics. So here, this is showing the slope of the terrain. So if you do have a prescribed burn planned, then maybe if you want to get an idea of the terrain or use this in your planning documents. There's also information about fuel types and surface fuels, which again could be used in your planning of a prescribed burn or in determining what areas you might want to target. So all these layers also have this little eye icon to the right of the layer name, and that will give you information about what the layer is and how it was calculated, if there is a calculation. And so you get a short description by hovering over the eye. Then some of them have this more button, which will give you a greater, more in-depth description of what that layer is. So in here, we also have some reference layers such as city boundaries, zip codes, county boundaries, NRDs. So that could be used if you want to try to look at those as your target area, or just to give yourself a reference while you're exploring the data in here. We also have information about historical fires. So this could be useful here. This is the point locations of where fires have started for the last 20 years or so, and they're color coded by the year. So this can give you an idea of, where fires might have naturally occurred recently, and that might help with planning purposes. You can also take a look at historical large fire perimeters. So this is showing the actual areas burned. And I cannot remember what the minimum fire size is for these. So this is not showing every single fire ever. It's showing fires that were over a certain size threshold. We also have included in here the boundaries for NFS fuels reduction projects for the last couple of years. So you can go in and look and see what might have already been done. And we do plan to try to update all of these on an annual basis, but they're not real time. Something that is real time in here is the US Drought Monitor layer. So if perhaps you have a prescribed fire planned and you want to kind of check on what conditions are ongoing, you can look to see what the drought conditions are. And this is updated every Thursday. And the data is produced by the National Drought Mitigation Center, which is actually on UNL's East Campus. We also have that fire weather that was on the home page in here as well. So you can look at relative humidity, wind gust, precipitation, and maximum temperature forecasts for the next 3 days. So I'm gonna now put it back to the default risk 4.5. And then I'll go to this next tab, which is the assess your location tab. Let me turn this off first. Okay, the assess your location tab, you can type in an address or a place. The map will zoom to that location and it will tell you what your wildfire risk is. And then you can download a short report for that location, and it'll go to the downloads in your browser. And this is what the report looks like. It's not terribly detailed. It just gives a quick overview of what the Risk Explorer is, what the risk rating is for that location, and then give some information about precautions and preparations that someone could take. So NFS is using this as sort of a starting point for landowners that might be interested in fuels reduction activities or fuels management on their property. So it's really just a high-level overview of wildfire risk. The more interesting feature, in my opinion, in this whole Risk Explorer is in this Areas of Interest tab. So this is where you can specify a custom area of interest within the state of Nebraska, and then you can download a report that gives pretty detailed information about risk and all the different data layers that were in that Map Themes tab. And that report also includes charts and maps for that data. And then it also gives you the option to download an ArcMap document if you're familiar with GIS, where you can view all of the data that's in that Map Themes tab and create your own custom maps if you're not happy with the maps that are in the exportable report document. So I'll first go through how to create one of those custom areas of interest. So there's a few ways that we can do that. The first is to click on this Create New button. And from there, you can create essentially a circle radius around a point. So if you're wanting to explore, maybe you have an idea of where you want to do a prescribed burn or some sort of conservation activity, and you're trying to plan for that. If you have a latitude and longitude coordinate, you can put that in the search bar here and it'll zoom there, or you can just select a point on the map and then you can create a buffer radius around that from a half mile up to a 50-mile radius. And so whatever shape you're making here is what your area of interest will be, which the report will give you all the detailed information for that area. You can also do that with a line. You can make a line and then do a buffer around the line, or you can go put in a polygon and then it'll give you the information for that polygon. Another way that you can create an area of interest is by a reference layer. So we had all those reference layers in the Map Themes tab, such as zip codes, NRD, boundaries, things like that. So you can also make an area of interest from one of those. In order to do that, you'll select this by reference layer option here. And let's say if we want to do an NRD, then you can select your NRD here in the drop-down list. The map will snap to that NRD, and then you can create that area of interest. The last way to create an area of interest is by uploading a shapefile. So if maybe you have an area of interest in mind and you already have the boundary for that in a shapefile and you want to view it on the map, you can do choose a shapefile, and you'll navigate to wherever that shapefile is saved. You'll have to zip it up with all the different components, and then you'll select it, press open, it'll bring it in here, it'll show you what the boundary of that shapefile is that you uploaded, and then you can complete the upload. So once you have, when you first come in, you won't have any areas of interest in here. But once you've created them from one of those 3 different ways that I showed, then they'll show up in here. So here is one that I created a while back. It's for the Central Platte NRD. And let's say that you wanted to now get the report, the detailed report for this area of interest. You would press on this Word document icon. You'll put your email address in there and then press this paper airplane button, and it will send you an email with a link to download that report. And this here is what the report looks like. It'll put your report name in the title here. And then the first thing in here is a quick introduction of what the Risk Explorer tool is. It gives you this chart that tells you all the different data that is included with a quick description, definition of what each of those layers is. And then for each of those layers, they get a section in this document that has a more in-depth description of the data, as well as a few charts and graphs and a map that help you to visualize and understand the data for your area of interest. So for this is that risk 4-5 layer, so the wildfire risk layer. So it's telling me here that 1 million acres of the Central Platte NRD, my area of interest is low risk, or 52%, and then it breaks it down for the acres and the percent of that area in all the different categories. It also, the report also includes this bar chart that has that same information, so it's showing me how basically the breakdown of the different risk categories for that area of interest. And then it also gives me a map that shows me the area of interest boundary and then that layer for the area. And these can be copied and pasted into other planning documents that you might have. And so you get all that information for all the different data layers that were in that map themes tab. So fire severities there. What's also interesting is, so some of these that have more categories, they have prettier graphs and stuff. But then what I wanted to look at was the historical fire ignitions. So if there have been fires, there might not always be fires in your area of interest, but if there are, then it breaks them down into the different years and the different classes for each of those years. So that might be kind of interesting to look at the history of the area. So then the other thing that you can do with that area of interest is download a ArcMap document. So if you're not happy with the maps that were in that document, then you can make your own. So to do that, you would click on this zip file icon, put your email in again, and then press the paper airplane to send an email. You'll get an email to download the ArcMap document again. And this is what that looks like. So it'll have the boundary for your area of interest, and then it'll have all those different reference layers. So you can turn them on and off if you're familiar with ArcMap. So you do need to have an ArcMap license to view this. But you can change the transparency, add your own base maps, really do whatever you want for whatever planning purposes that you might have. So we hope that this will be used and that it will be helpful. I will say that we are taking suggestions for new data or different data layers that people might find useful. It's not a guarantee that we'll be able to incorporate those ideas, but we are open to suggestions. So with that, I can take questions.